Welcome to the Love and Meaning Podcast, where inner work is a lifestyle. Chrystelle Robinson-Tiedemann here, or Cree of Coaching with Cree, and welcome back to another episode of the Love and Meaning Podcast. At Coaching with Cree, what I teach and embody and am passionate about is what I like to call inner work as a lifestyle. And I recently had the privilege, I had the honor of being invited to speak on a panel of women entrepreneurs, spiritual business entrepreneurs, in a summit called Audacious. And in the interview that I completed last week, one of the questions that all of the participants are asked is, what is a big, courageous or brave or audacious move that you made that has gotten you where you are today? And my own answer kind of blew me away. And I don't know that I'd ever really articulated it in that way, but I knew where inner work as a lifestyle came from, but this really set it solid and in place for me. It really brought some pieces together. And my answer to the question was the first really brave and audacious move that I made that set me on the trajectory to be where I am today is that I decided to believe that my mistakes were not failures. I decided that the mistakes that I have made in my life, in my past, were actually profound launching pads for me, for learning, for pivoting. They were opportunities to integrate massive lessons in my life and change my life for the better. And this was a brave move to make because I made a lot of mistakes. None of us are perfect, and yet still most of us really struggle with actually accepting the fact that mistakes, ups and downs, challenges, consequences for not great actions, poor choices, poor judgment is part of our growth process. And I'm most definitely not excusing poor choices. And I'm also not even saying that there are things that I wish that I didn't do. That's not what it is at all. But the reality is that this is a real part of life. And the choice that I made to make every aspect of my life meaningful has been a very powerful choice and has led me to really great things. I want to quote the amazing Jenny Kahn of the Medium Experience. She said something recently that I think literally were the words in my soul that just brought into the English language. It was like the language of my soul spoken in English. And what she said is, part of my entire life is about contemplating to find or discovering something meaningful so I can become more whole or healed or become better and then serve. And this is precisely my purpose here on the planet. And that audacious move was really the beginning of sending me on on the trajectory to realize that and to really change my life and have a very positive impact on the people around me. So that being said, I want to share a very vulnerable personal story with you guys today. And this story kind of encapsulates everything that brought me to inner work as a lifestyle. Everything that brought me to really the practices that have become so meaningful in my life and the practices that I teach in close proximity and in my membership. This is basically what I do. This is inner work in a life as a lifestyle in a nutshell. The foundation of it.
So the outline of this story is I'm in my mid-20s. I am living with my parents because I'm doing my master's, and I had a really hard time working and doing my master's at the same time. So all I would do is these side gigs. And something most people don't know about me is that I used to act. And so I got into hosting events and stuff when I was in my acting days. And so I had a gig the next day. It was for a pride event. I was hosting with, one of my entertainment personas, and I needed to prepare for the event. And the whole day, my ex-boyfriend, we were broken up yet again, who had been in this kind of tumultuous back and forth relationship, on again, off again, total drama all the time. He'd been messaging me all day. And to provide context for this relationship, this ex-boyfriend, the reason we had broken up is because when we were on a previous break, he had done anything and everything to try to get me back and succeeded in being able to do that. And once we were back together again, I then found out that while we were not together, he actually started dating someone else. And not only was he dating that person, they were actually living together. So he was now dating both of us. So that's the context of that situation. So this person is texting me like crazy. But the thing is, like, I'm still so caught up in it. Like, it's taking so much of my mental energy. I'm really like focused on it. So much of who I was defined by my relationships. I was in such an external time of my life. Like, I didn't have internal strength. Everything was external. And it also made me, a good friend. I'm a great friend now, but I've always been a good friend. It's something that's really in one of my strong suits. But one of the ways that I showed up in friendship is that I love to be the person that people rely upon. Like, it gave me a sense of purpose. And I often found myself doing things, putting myself out and doing things that if I truly asked myself, I didn't want to do. But I liked being the person that people could rely upon and being there for the people that I love. And so that was part of my identity, is that I do these things because I'm a loving, caring person, right? And so, very codependent, a lot of enmeshment. So as I'm preparing for the gig, it's the evening. I'm done what I have to do. My car is in the shop. I have arranged with my father that I can borrow his car to go to the thing tomorrow. So it's like midnight now, I go to bed, and maybe like 2 hours or an hour and a half into my sleep, my phone's ringing off the hook, and it was on vibrate, and I hear vibrate in my sleep. So I woke up to it, and it's the ex calling. So I answer, and he is in ripe form, telling me he's clearly very inebriated. He's crying, he's distraught, and pulling one of those, if you don't, like, I'm gonna hurt myself. I'm gonna do something to myself. And so, little Miss Fix It, I'm like, no, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. And eventually stay on the phone with him. He's like so not in a place to be reasonable or speak, and becomes a little more provocative. And I'm eventually like, just stay where you are. I'm coming to get you. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I have a gig the following morning. I have to be downtown for 8 a.m. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't have a car. I'm borrowing my father's car the next day. So I sneak with my father's car at 2 o'clock in the morning, drive downtown, pick up this drunken mess of a man, pile him into, like, first, like, have to get him up and, like, go in, help him close out his bar. Like, it was a mess. Anyways, get him into my car. He's crying, saying the mistake that he made. He doesn't even want to be with her. He's trapped himself in this relationship. I'm the greatest thing, like the usual. And so because I'm literally concerned for his life, I bring him home, sneak him into my childhood bedroom, my parents' house, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean? So, like, it's like I get him in, I clean him up, blah, blah, blah. He literally, like, sleeps on the floor in my bedroom because I have a single bed in my parents' bedroom, in my parents' house. And we end up, however, long it takes, and I end up getting like an hour and a half of sleep for this gig the next day. Wake up early the next day. He's like better. I mean, hungover, but like, have more sense. And I now, before I have to go to my gig, which is a whole day affair, okay? A whole day of events that I'm going to, including the march and blah, blah, blah. I drop him first and then head to my gig. And let me remind you, I'm dropping this person to return to the woman that he was with while we were not together, and then was still the woman he's living with that, he cheated on me with. So it's an overarching mess. So I go to the gig and I'm exhausted, and I just go from caffeine to alcohol and adrenaline to get me through the day. And I make it all through the day, all the different parts. And now I have just been like drinking coffee and alcohol the whole day. And I am beyond, the event goes well. I am beyond exhausted, though. Like, I'm literally a mess, but I am still little Miss Fix It. I still have this, like, I have to be the one that people rely upon. So I can't say like I'm exhausted. I can't say that I'm actually emotionally a mess. And what I've been doing today is shielding all of my feelings by drinking and trying to force myself to have more fun so I don't think about the mess of a situation that the emotional, the romantic part of my life is, and what I did last night. And I felt embarrassed, like I felt it was my way of escaping it. And so at the end of the night, I'm already exhausted. I've barely slept. I've been drinking. Little Miss Fix It insists that before I even head home now, I will drop everyone else home, because there's a bunch of other people involved, right, in the event. And I insist now that I'm also going to drop everyone else home, because they live in the downtown area, and I didn't live in the downtown area, so I drove in, and I could drop them off in that instead of them having to take a car or public transit. I shouldn't even be driving. Okay. So I do it. I drop everyone. My sibling even tried to convince me, like I can't even say someone didn't try to stop me. My sibling tried to convince me not to, and I was insisting that I was fine. I was not fine. So I drop everyone, and now on my final leg home, on the final strip before I get onto the highway, the 401, to head up to the East End where I lived, I fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into headfirst into an electrical pole. And the only thing on me is I have a bruise across my chest in the exact shape of the seatbelt. Well, this is seemingly what my only injury was. And but the car is absolutely totaled. I get arrested. I'm arrested for drunk driving and handcuffed and taken to the precinct, and I, have to call my parents and tell them what happened and ask for help. And I when I got home eventually the following morning, the way my father looked at me, I will never forget. I will never forget the way that he looked at me. I have never experienced shame or disgust in that way ever. And I've never since. And it broke me. It was the beginning of my breaking. And a whole bunch of events passed after that too. That was the beginning of hitting rock bottom, the downward spiral, which I will not share as part of the story. What I will share after that part is that I had no capacity to hold emotions. I remember what that it felt like, the way that he looked at me. I remember that pain. I felt that pain deeply. And that was the beginning of do anything you can to not feel this pain. So I literally moved out. I packed my stuff. I moved out of the house. And my father did not speak to me for a long time. And I blamed everything but me on the situation. And I had this beautiful, beautiful example of a hot mess of a man to blame. It's all his fault. I was up all night. I didn't get any sleep. I was dropping everybody home. I did this. I did that. I had everything to blame. And so I was just masterful at blaming anything but myself for the situation. And fast forward, I somehow finished school. I somehow, the judge dropped my charges because I've never had any other criminal thing, dropped my charges down to reckless driving. So I didn't have any criminal record, took my license and slapped me with a $26,000 fine. And somehow I finished school, and all of these, in hindsight, I look back at all of these graces, like I wasn't on the highway when it happened. Like, my God, how? And how, the leniency of the judge, how I was not graduated from school yet and I got a job. I hadn't even graduated and I was offered a job, and the job was in New York City. Woohoo, escape. So I get to leave this place and these memories. I get to leave my shame behind. I get to start over, start fresh. So I take this job, and I will be heading to New York City from Toronto in about a month. In all of this times, because some time has gone by, I did actually stumble upon personal development for the first time and started seeing the world a little bit differently. But what I can say is that the way that I was engaging with the personal development at that time was escapism. I found this world of positivity, and it felt like I could leave my negative past behind. And I think this is almost like the term of toxic positivity, but I like threw myself into this, and it felt like such a breath of fresh air from what I had been experiencing. And so I really kind of went headfirst into this world, into this realm, and it felt really good um, to kind of be surrounded by like, look forward, don't look back. The past is in the past. It's all about what you get to do now. And I have this new job in this new city, and I'm like, let's go, you know? So I moved to New York City, and I think I had mentioned already that I was raised Catholic. And so now I'm living in New York City, and my sibling had come to visit, and they were still, actively participating in the church. So they went to mass every week, and I was not practicing at all. Like I had already decided that wasn't for me. But when my sibling came to visit and went to this church, they said to me, you need to go to this church. It's amazing. It's really close by to your house. And like, it was so beautiful. Like, you have to check it out. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, no, really, like, it's like stunning. It's like a piece of artwork in the middle of Brooklyn. Like, you won't believe when you go into this church. So I say, okay, fine. And out of respect, I wanted to go see it. I chose a mass time like the next week or whatever. So I go to this church to see it. And like, I stay for the mass so that I'm not like disruptive or just gawking. And I'm just like, it is actually stunning to this day. It's one of the most gorgeous churches I've ever been to. It's a basilica, actually. So what happens is I'm leaving the church. The priest greets everyone on the way out, in and out. He speaks to me. He strong arms me into joining their like adult youth group and like older youth group. Activates very much like that part of me, like within this youth group. He basically is continuously priming me to lead in some way. And I'm constantly telling him, like, I don't even know why I'm at this church. Like, I'm not a believer. Like, and he's like, you are a leader. Like, you're meant to be here. You have so much to offer. No, like, he's not taking anything that I'm saying. And I'm like involved in this youth group. And eventually, like, there's an event. So the youth group does different events in the church, and there is a presentation that they want to do I think it was during Easter time, but we were assigned, the event was that there are 6 different passages from the readings during Mass that he wants 6 different people to go up in front of the church and read the passage, but then provide, like, he will read the passage during Mass, and then the person is going to share the real life lived experience of that. Like, how does that translate into real life experience? This was like his thing. And I mean, my God, like, in hindsight, this man was so meant to be doing what he's doing, like angel on earth. Like, he's truly a person who found his calling, one of a kind. So anyways, of course, he voluntold me to do it. I'm like, no. He's like, yes, I agree to do it. That keener part of me, I don't want to, like, disappoint. I have to do well. So I decide to do it. And the assignment that I'm given, the passage that I'm given, I go home and I sit with it, because if I'm agreeing to do a thing, like, I'm like, I have to do it right now, and also that performer part of me, like, I wasn't going to get up in front of that church and like not do this thing properly. But when I read the passage, the thing that came up for me was my accident. And I don't talk about that. I don't think about that. I mean, I can't help but think about it sometimes, but I do everything I can to distract myself from that when those thoughts come up. Like, I don't go there. That's the past. It's done. It's not something that we focus on. And it was impossible not to focus on it. And I sat with it for the first time in probably like what, I don't know, like 2 years, a year and a half. And all of the feelings came back. But the only way to properly do the assignment, I had to sit with them. I didn't realize what I was doing with contemplation at that time, but like I had to sit with all of those feelings and prepare my story and my share and my statement. And as I'm sitting and I'm reading this thing and I'm thinking about my life and I'm feeling all these feelings, I hear this thing. It's not really like a voice, but like it's like an inner knowing that comes through. And it says, come clean. And I'm like, no. I don't even think about this with myself. You want me to tell a whole bunch of strangers this like the most shameful experience of my life? And so I do. So fast forward to I do. And I share the story in front of these people, and at the end of the mass, and I'm like a mess, like I'm falling apart crying, sharing my experience. And at the end of the mass, before I can run out of there, because that's what I want to do so that I don't have to look at anybody in the face, because I've now told even the people that I do know this story, which was probably scarier than telling the people I don't know. But before I could run out of there, there was a lineup from my pew at the front all the way to the back of the church of people wanting to shake my hand, look me in the face and say thank you, to commend me, to let me know how they were inspired. It was an incredible experience, not just for myself up there sharing it, something happened to me up there sharing it, but in being confronted by other people's response to what I considered to be just shameful and negative. And that was when I learned that compassion, the compassion that I'd been hearing about inner work, in my inner work and personal development, the self-love that I'd been hearing, it's actually forgiveness. And that was the first time I forgave myself for my accident and the choices that I had made that brought me there. And in turn, it started an entire cycle of forgiving myself for everything, all of the things that I'd been through. I then became the one who took the initiative to heal the relationship with my father without needing an apology from him for the way that he treated me afterwards. Just the forgiveness went through me and it bled out to so many other people. It was such a powerful experience, and I have been a very different person from that day on. And I started accessing all the locked away parts of me. And it launched me into a space to truly learn from my inner work. Not just plaster a happy face on pain. I started the process of looking back through my past and extracting massive lessons, because how come I shared this story and all these people were inspired? Like, you were inspired, I was just ashamed. So there was something to learn in there. What was there to learn in there? I started doing that and realizing there was something to learn from everything. Holy crap. I actually had a lot of wisdom in me from all of these experiences. And I started this process of reflection that was incredibly enlightening. And I started diving into the shadows. I started diving into being able to sit in the feelings, sit in the pain as I objectively extracted these lessons from my past and showered myself with forgiveness for them. And that voice, I never forgot that voice that told me, come clean. is really when I also realized that there is the process of sitting with things, the process of just sitting in quiet. There is something else speaking to me. Something else was shining love on me in that moment that wasn't my conscious self. Because I didn't see any love in that situation. I just saw, you're a fuck up. But source came through, spirit came through. And I started actively listening to that, looking for that voice and listening to that voice. And then the main thing of all of it is I started integrating those lessons into my life. This actually is when I started to seek out inner work for dating and realizing like, hey, there's a reason that your dating life is a hot mess, because there's so many emotions involved in that, and what you do is avoid those. So let's go into it. And it was that work actually sparked so much of my deep inner work, because it was when I started that work that actually led me to realizing I wanted to be a spiritual teacher. It was that work that led me to finding human design and really diving into self-discovery. And, you know, I met my husband. I met, like, everything started exponentially manifesting, like showing up in my life. The things I always wanted started showing up in the physical in my life, even though I had already been doing personal development for about 2 years at that time. It didn't land in the way that it was giving me these tangible results. Everything started to change. And so the dance that I extracted from this story is the importance of detaching, the importance of being able to sit and tap into spirit to hear that loving presence and voice that's always with us, even when we don't feel loving with ourselves. And then diving into the feelings. And this idea that the compassion that we need to pour on our past experience. There's no diving into your feelings that doesn't involve into your past. So going to the roots of things and being able to sit with the triggers, sit with the feelings, sit with ourselves in love. That is forgiveness. So tapping into the overarching love of the universe that's always there, diving into the depths of ourselves, into our past, into our pains, and holding ourselves in forgiveness and compassion, and then emerging, coming back from that into heart center, into our present, and walking with the integration, walking with the lessons that it gives us. So it's not forget your past, move forward. It's what does your past have to offer, move forward. And allowing all of those lessons and that immense amount of love that it takes to look at our own lived experiences and the things that bother us and the things that cause us pain, and to walk forward in love and forgiveness. The immense amount of love that produces for ourselves and automatically for the other people around us is an incredible fertile ground for everything that we want out of life. So this story really demonstrates the core of my teachings. Compassion is forgiveness. And what we're going to do is you're going to tap into the higher power. Listen to the intuitive voices. Learn to get quiet and listen to universal wisdom. Hold yourself in love and dive deep into our past to extract lessons. Come back to the present and walk forward with a tangible lesson. This is the dance, and this is the lifestyle of inner work. And this is the lifestyle that I'm living.
I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.